The Fanboy, episode 137. Hi, everybody. Mario Francisco Robles, MFR here with you, along with Brett Miro, and this is the Fanboy Podcast. How's everybody doing out there? Brett, most importantly...
We're doing great, Mario. Brett, it's awesome out here.
That is... I always assume that that's exactly what everyone is saying back at their device.
100%. At that exact pitch.
Yeah, exactly in that way. But most importantly now, Brett, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well.
I
had to think about it a little bit, but I'm hanging in there.
Yeah, you had to kind of consider it. All right.
Yeah.
We'll unpack that a little later on.
Sure.
Things over here on my end are starting to get interesting. Things are starting to heat up. Something I haven't announced here on this show, but I have announced elsewhere in the social media, is that I'm expecting my third child. My wife and I are expecting our second daughter, and that's happening April 18th. And so this week was big on getting the house ready for the arrival of the third child. And it's really starting to sink in. It's becoming a reality that number 3 is going to be here soon. And, so life is a trip, Brett.
Yeah.
But, all right. So with that in mind, you know what else is a trip? What's happening in the world of geekdom, in the world of the DCEU, in the world of Marvel. There's been a lot going on since we last spoke, because there was the Super Bowl that happened over the weekend with some interesting trailers that came out. We're going to talk about one in particular. There was also an exclusive sort of look at where DC is going next with this cool little teaser that got sent out called The World Needs Heroes. There's some interesting rumors I've been hearing about what's going on with The Flash and where things are going next with DC. And of course, first things first, we've got that explosive Peacemaker finale. So we have a lot of ground to cover. There's a lot.
Huge week.
Right? It's been a huge week. And I feel like we should just kind of dive right in. So let's go ahead and start with our spoilerific response to the Peacemaker Season 1 finale. And I should mention that, by the way, it's officially Season 1 now, because they announced this week that Peacemaker is returning for Season 2, which I'm rejoicing about. I'm
very
sure you
excited
are as
about
well.
that.
But so, Brett, what did you think of the finale? About how they wrapped up this first Peacemaker story that we're getting on HBO Max?
So someone over there obviously listens to me, and they said, you know what, we're going to make a nice, tight 8-episode season where there's no filler. Every episode moves the plot along. It's fun, and we actually get some great character work and character development. And that's exactly what this finale did. It wrapped everything up really nice, closed this chapter up with a nice little bow, but left some place for our characters and our team to go. And I don't even know where to start. Some of the best action, I think, fights choreography was in this episode. There was that really, really cool battle outside of the barn. Let's talk about the cow. that creature in general is the most wild, gross thing ever, with the weird nipple milkers. Like the honey milkers. God. They had these little contraptions that were doing it, and it was like very well animated.
Yeah.
It was disturbing. There was just there was everything. There was a lot of funny. This episode was really, really funny. There was a lot of funny.
Yeah.
It was like almost slapstick at points. There was just like a lot of great like sight gag humor, and with the human torpedo moment, well, two human torpedo moments that just were really tremendous.
There were a number of great sort of standout moments, and it really did hit a lot of different sort of levels throughout the episode, because we did start with the conflict still between Peacemaker and Adebayo, right, about he's still sore about everything, the planting of the journal, just
the betrayal overall.
On speaking terms, by the end they're almost BFF. Remember, after Eagly, next BFF.
She's second.
But BFF. That arc gets rewarded because we bring that conflict into the episode, but then throughout the course of it's just. There was a lot of ground covered. I'm trying to think of the thing that I want to hit on the most. But for you in general, finales can be sort of hit or miss. How did this rate for you as a finale? Did James Gunn stick the landing on season 1?
Yeah, like I said, for me, I thought that really it wrapped everything up, but left it a place to go, left like somewhere for the show to go after this. I thought as far as finales go, it was great. Like I said, just in general, this whole series was the way I like to watch television and the way I like to see it go. It's like you always notice when these seasons are longer, you get a couple of crappy episodes that can't keep up the quality. And it allowed them, I think, too, having a short season to have like a pretty nice sized budget for a lot of these episodes. And we can talk about that a little more too with a couple of little special guests that we had at the end of the episode.
Oh, we're gonna get to that. Trust me.
Yeah. So very, very overall, yeah. I mean, I this show, the whole season, and the finale, I give like an A.
You give it an A?
It's an A, yeah.
And so season 1, in your book, was a success on Peacemaker.
Great success.
And it's crazy to think, by the way, that like if you trace this project back to how we ended up here, it all started by James Gunn getting fired from Guardians Volume 3.
It's wild.
Because there was this, you remember, there was this Twitter controversy over some weird jokes and references he made on Twitter like 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And Disney did a thing where they canned him. And then now in that limbo, suddenly ripped away from the MCU that he had been helping to build, ripped away from Guardians Volume 3, that suddenly DC showed up on his doorstep and they were like, hey, we hear you're free, right?
Yeah.
And that's how the Suicide Squad came to be. And then while making the Suicide Squad, he just got inspired to do this Peacemaker thing because he didn't go into the Suicide Squad thinking, I'm going to make a TV show out of this, So it's just, it's fascinating to think.
And there's another one on the way of some other Suicide Squad spin-off show.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's just funny to think that had he not been fired from Guardians 3, there'd be no The Suicide Squad and there'd be no Peacemaker. So it's just crazy to think how the little rabbit hole that led us here.
He really took advantage of the opportunity. He got screwed out of Marvel.
Yeah,
and came and really capitalized on all that. And as it turns out, he's back at Marvel anyway. So he's just playing. He's got both houses in his pockets.
He's doing both. Now. Yeah, he's doing both.
Yeah.
Now, one of the plot points that I thought was major, we were talking a lot last week about the butterflies and trying to find out more. Like, we're going to find out exactly who they are and what they are. They're going to get a more official name of some kind.
Right.
Well, we didn't get a name, but we got a motive. We got a modus operandi for why they're here, what their mission is. And it was an interesting one, right?
Yeah.
Because essentially, I mean, like all good villains, they see themselves like the hero in the story. Essentially, they reveal to Peacemaker that like we're watching humans destroy their planet the way our creatures destroyed our planet through their own pride, through believing in false prophets, through ignoring science, through all this other stuff. So there's your James Gunn sort of
social commentary,
social political
socio-political
commentary. Yeah, and I love that. I love whenever these stories kind of reach for something a little higher. So that was music to my ears, and it makes for like an interesting dilemma, right? It's almost like Thanos' mission as a villain. We're like, you know what?
Right.
In certain ways, Thanos makes certain pretty good points, right? We've had that discussion that Thanos is right. And in this particular case, if they really do see it as humans are going to destroy a perfectly hospitable Earth, and they don't listen to reason. So we just got to take over their bodies and against their will help, save the world that way. Like it's such a weird, twisted, inverted way of looking at things. It is perfectly James Gunn in that way.
Yeah, but it was really cool. And then the way that Peacemaker responded.
And I didn't know what he was going to do because for a second, like she made a very compelling case. And she brought up their prior relationship because, when he had that butterfly trapped in the jar, he was kind to it and he fed it a lot and she got to see what he's really like and that he's not a bad person. And she did the peace sign on the thing, So for a second there, I'm like, wait a minute. Are they really going to have Peacemaker join the side of the aliens? Yeah. Because the aliens do bring up a pretty good point, And then it's funny, though, because at the end of the episode, when he's asked about that, it isn't some huge world saving or other large ramification he was worried about. The reason he ultimately decided to thwart them was because he knew they would hurt his friends. And for the first time in his life, this guy's got friends. He's got a family.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting.
And he had to make a choice for himself, I think, too, after constantly making choices for other people, his father, and like, that was kind of the thing. He was like, I'm going to save the world, but like I need to do it my way. I can't allow you guys to do it your way. Like I'm not going to just fall into that again. So yeah, like what a great arc and character. Like that character grew, over those 8 episodes.
Absolutely.
Like
and I loved it, like
a significant amount.
Yeah. Look, sometimes in these shows, they'll gloss over big character moments, like, or they'll take for granted certain moments, like the main character in a series will kill someone one episode, and then in the next episode they're just living their life as if nothing happened. There's no real ramifications, where like in real life, when a common person does something like this, it sticks with them for a while, right? Yeah. And in that last episode, homie killed his own father, and in this episode we saw that like that had an effect on him, and he's having almost like PTSD moments where he's seeing his father in the woods, and in that moment where he shoots a blow dart at the thought of his father.
Yeah,
they took that moment seriously though, where when the dart hits his head and there's the blood, like he dies all over again.
Right.
Like it wasn't just played for laughs, and you could see like this is something that Chris, Peacemaker, is going to have to live with for a while. It's not just like, it's not this easy thing that happens in a TV show. Oh, he killed his villain and now he's happy-go-lucky and everything's good. Like, no,
well, even the end of the episode as well, when he's sitting drinking in his trailer, after his father shows up again, sitting next to him.
Yeah.
So like, and it's still there. It's still something he's going to be dealing with going into season 2.
And it's
that's where you want to have a character. Like that's exactly where you want to leave them. And I'm really excited. I think it was such a great job.
And I feel like in a weird way, it's going to come back to haunt him that he killed his father, because the version that just lives in his head is probably way worse. You know what I mean? Like
when you have all the worst parts.
Yeah, like when you have those people in your life who are just that negative presence in your life. It's their worst parts. At least when the father was really there, he could go and speak to the actual one. Here, now all he has is the evil, maniacal thought of his dad stuck in his head. So that's going to be interesting to see them play that out. And I was like low key very happy that Robert Patrick still has a job. Because remember I was sad that like I wanted to see more from him. And then when he got killed off, I'm like, oh, that's it. But no, it looks like he's going to be like, he's going to be part of the show still, just as one of Chris's thoughts. Just overall, I thought, what an interesting story. What an interesting way to come at social issues. What an interesting choice to have Peacemaker, who's this absurd looking weird character with tacky helmets and all this stuff, to use this character to tell a story that actually has something to say and has an emotional arc. I mean, that's, that takes a certain skill set.
That's sorcery.
I was I'm still very, very impressed at how much they got out of this Peacemaker concept. I don't think when they announced John Cena was playing this ridiculous looking guy in the Suicide Squad, I don't think anyone thought that we'd be getting quite this sort of layered storytelling, Yeah,
not at all. Not at all. I thought it was,
and we have the thing now with hardcore, which I will say one thing. If anything feels perhaps a little rushed, I would say it's the romance between him and hardcore, because like we kind of get it. Like, she was a hard ass at first, but she's slowly warming to him. I feel like she warmed pretty quick. You know what I mean? Like someone like 2 or 3 episodes ago, she just decided, okay, he's pretty awesome. That was it.
I saw them like warm up into a friendship, but I never quite got that it was warming into a romance. I always just thought he wanted to sleep with her, and she was just like, all right, he's an acceptable person to like talk to now. So that did seem a little forced, especially because like they weren't even together really for the whole final battle. Like it's not like there was like a romantic moment where he saved her or something. Like so that was a little forced. I agree. That's like the only, but it's like I'm nitpicking. I mean, like, come on.
I'm not saying it ruined anything, but I will
Not at
say,
all.
like, if it that might be the thing that felt the least earned, if
Yeah.
that makes any sense.
I
When
had
she
listen
reaches
when I watched
over,
it, I had the thought come into my head too. I literally it happened. I
like,
was like, this
eh,
seems a little
yeah, like when
okay.
they're holding hands in the hospital bed, like, oh,
Yeah.
this sudden tenderness out of nowhere,
Right.
And it's funny too, because for a second I thought maybe they were going to let the butterfly take over her brain,
Yeah.
because I almost saw it
To
as
keep her
like,
alive.
yeah, like, all right, so I guess she's about to die, but if this thing takes over, a version of her lives on because it takes on her memories and all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
So for a second there, I'm like, are they going to do that? And then they didn't.
Yeah.
But
Same. I thought the
yeah,
same.
really just interesting show, and really, where they're going. The fact that it ends with this, with the seeds planted for season 2. You're showing him out front. We've got Eagly, we've got the dad, we've got the butterfly sitting between them eating the honey, so the butterfly doesn't hate him,
Right.
even though he turned his back on them and killed the cow. There's the butterfly is still there. Now Amanda Waller has been put on blast in public by her daughter, who's blown the lid off Task Force X.
And we get Viola Davis actually showing up
Yeah.
to
So
like
like there's a
react
lot of
to it. So that was
interesting
cool.
dynamics here. Lots of places to go. So season 2 can't come fast enough, if you ask me. But now we got to talk about the big cameos, right? Because
Big cameo.
earlier in the episode, they foreshadowed, right? They planted seeds where once they realized the nature of the mission, one of them said, "Can we just call the Justice League?" Right? And it was kind of scoffed at, and it is what it is. But then now at the end of the episode, once our heroes have saved the day, they're walking away from the
Burning barn in the
destroyed
wreckage.
barn, yeah. And suddenly that's when the Justice League arrives. The Justice League in the form of Superman, Aquaman, the Flash, and Wonder Woman. Okay. And at first it's just silhouettes. And I got to tell you, it's pretty cool that, like, the silhouettes, you see very clearly who these are. Like that, this was the Justice League that's been built up all these years. The Justice
Right.
League that we kind of thought maybe at some point they were going to retcon them out or whatever. Like, no, these, as of right now, as of February of 2022, DC's Justice League looks like this. So for those of you, by the way, who are like hashtag restore the Snyderverse, hashtag this, hashtag that, like, guys, they're here. The Justice League characters that you loved are here. All right. And they
Right.
look pretty badass. Okay. Now listen, the Superman is just a silhouette, but it's very clearly meant to be Henry Cavill's silhouette, at least, with the
Yes.
big billowing cape and the shape of his head. It's clearly meant to be the Man of Steel Superman, right? And then you have the Barry Allen Flash, who's wearing the costume from the Zack Snyder Justice League movie, and the theatrical cut, right? But then you have Aquaman, who's dressed in the James Wan Aquaman suit. So it's kind of cool, kind of, merging
Right.
all the ideas. And then Wonder Woman is just, again, similar to Superman. Is
I
that
assume Gal
silhouette.
Gadot could not take the time
Yeah,
off to come
which,
film. That's really what it was. But
who could blame her?
yeah.
And then they have that moment, though. They revisit the joke about Aquaman having sex with fish. And Barry's like, well, it's not a joke, though.
Yeah,
Fuck
so basically confirming, like, nah, you kind of do. Whether he's referring to Mira or, like,
Yeah.
if he does do some shady stuff.
So
But
listen,
I like that they acknowledge it.
that cameo, that cameo was huge, and there's a lot to sort of unpack there, because, like I said, we've now got established that is still our Justice League. The most recent bit of DC Entertainment is Peacemaker, right?
Mhm.
And their finale included a Justice League, and these are still our Justice Leaguers, okay? And it's interesting because there was a quote that came out this week that I thought was interesting. All right. It came from Casey Bloys, who basically sort of runs the show over there at HBO Max. And he was talking about how one of the top priorities Ann Sarnoff had when when the DC universe was kind of getting remanaged and reshuffled, was to kind of have things be a little more organized, have a more coherent plan. Because remember, with all the power changes in 2016 and
Mm-hmm.
2017, whatever plans had been in existence leading up to Justice League had been thrown out the window. And through the different regime changes, there was lots of uncertainty about what was going to stay, what wasn't, what is the roadmap. This has been a slow moving, soft reboot for the last 5 freaking
Yeah.
years. And so Casey Bloys was in an interview was talking about the priorities of trying to put this all together in a way that actually makes sense. And I want to read that to you because I feel like the Peacemaker cameos are part of a bigger picture that kind of show that, like, wait a minute, there is a coherent sort of shared universe happening after all. But here are the quotes. So Casey Bloys told the Hollywood Reporter, one of the things that Ann Sarnoff has been big on is trying to make DC work in a more organized and integrated way. I wasn't there before, so I don't know how things were done. But since I started at AX a year and a half ago, we spent a lot of time talking with Toby Emmerich and Walter Hamada and Jim Lee at DC, and we're trying to be mindful about how all the pieces work together. In my estimation, it feels very well organized. That's something that was very important to Anne when she started a few years ago. So now, the reason I think that this all kind of comes into play is this. I've been hearing for the last 2 years, and it's something I talked about on this show for a while, that Jim Lee and the multiverse, the concept of the multiverse is something Jim Lee has believed very strongly on, and ever since he took over as president of DC. And that's a big deal because he was influential. He was integral in having Ezra Miller's Flash show up in the Arrowverse, in that Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover, where he wanted to establish that those Justice League, those DCEU characters are connected to what you're seeing here in the Arrowverse. And that's why he had Ezra Miller come face to face with Grant Gustin's Flash. And I assume there's going to be a bookend to that cameo in the Flash where Grant Gustin is going to show up. Because again, right, Jim Lee, they're really banking heavily on this multiverse concept, right? And we know that Andy Muschietti said all kinds of things about the way the multiverse is going to work in the Flash. So when you factor all that in, when you have the cameo where Ezra Miller showed up in Arrowverse, now he's shown up in Peacemaker, and now we know that later on this year when there's a Flash movie, there's going to be all kinds of other stuff where the other heroes are involved. It kind of gives you this idea that there is a sort of roadmap, that there is a sort of game plan, and that things aren't just kind of happening sort of, smack dash,
right?
And things aren't just being, because at certain times it would feel like DC was just throwing a bunch of things at the wall and seeing what stuck.
Yeah, the days of a million random announcements are over, hopefully.
Yeah. But now we're really starting to get a sense of like, oh no, there is someone at the helm here. And this is going to pay off in some pretty interesting ways, and I'm going to just continue with a second part of Bloys' comments. Actually, no, this is from Toby Emmerich, just talking about the way HBO Max will be working with the big screen stuff too, because Peacemaker is a good example of that. Emmerich added, HBO Max presents a huge opportunity for DC. It allows us to make high-quality, mid-budget superhero movies that reintroduce lesser-known DC titles while also crossing over standout characters from our bigger films into original series. So clearly he knew about he was kind of foreshadowing the Justice League arriving in Peacemaker. Connecting the DC cinematic universe with Max gives our fans more ways to explore the DC multiverse and more chances to enjoy more great stories with these beloved characters. So it's kind of just cool to see this idea of the synergy between the movies and what's going on HBO Max and what's going on over on the CW, and kind of getting a sense that Jim Lee and company are actually working on something pretty damn cool, something pretty coherent, And like even that little, did you get a chance to see that highlight clip that came out right before the Super Bowl? The world needs heroes.
The world needs heroes.
Right? That was an awesome little 1-minute clip that came out that it highlighted four particular things. It highlighted the Batman, it highlighted Black Adam, it highlighted the Flash, and it highlighted Aquaman, Aquaman, and the Lost Kingdom. As if, like, these are the things you need to be paying attention to in the
Right.
coming year, because these are the big four DC things happening this year. And for first of all, what did you think of the highlight reel and the way it seemed to like tie all these projects together?
No, I thought it was like a nice little present for fans almost in a way, just like because we've had so much uncertainty
Yeah,
and just to really they always do like the DC fandom every year and that kind of is the big celebration, but this was like a nice little thing, just say, hey, this is what's on the horizon, look forward to this. Then, like you said, we couple it with Peacemaker and that little crossover there, and it just says, hey, we want your eyes locked on DC, we want you on CW, we want you on HBO Max giving us subscription money, and we want you spending money at the theaters, and you need to be locked into our ecosystem. We have a plan now. We're confident.
yeah,
We're showing you clips of movies that are actually filmed and
yeah,
actually done. We're not just announcing projects that are just going into the ether. So
yeah.
it's a statement from them. And you know
I
what?
think
Listen,
so.
all those little clips look great. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm very excited after that period of uncertainty. I know some people are sad that maybe the Snyder storylines are not continuing, but
Yeah.
like we said, the characters are here. They're not just erasing everything. So like
No, they're not.
it kind of lives on. It might not follow his blueprint, but they're there. Like, so there is that still foundation. You can still look back and say, hey, Zack brought us these guys originally, and really peppered them out into the DCEU. So
Yeah.
I think it's a. I want to be positive about it. I know some people will just kick and scream no matter how hard they want, but it's a good
Yeah.
thing for all fans. I really think it
Yeah.
is. It's the best way forward. It's gonna pay off, guys. Just these things take time. These are huge, Titanic ships that we need to
Yep.
turn around. So
And
be a
I
little more
really
patient.
think, yeah, I
Yeah.
think it really says something though too, that like about how the folks running DC currently view those older DC movies. The fact that James Gunn was able to bring that version of the Justice League into this hugely successful current DC property shows that like they're not trying to hide these guys, or
Right.
they're not trying to like, act like those movies didn't happen. It's
Hmm.
the fact that they got approval to use these versions of the characters, to use that artwork, to use that feel and look. And it kind of shows you, it gives me hope that in the Flash, these versions of the characters are going to be given their proper due. Because a lot of people, I feel like a lot of the concern people have is is the Flash is going to nuke everything and have no regard for what came
Right.
before? And I don't think they are. I think, it looks like they're finding a way to honor what's come while
Hmm.
putting a new twist on things and pushing towards the future. So I'm very excited about that.
Yeah.
Um, and what I thought was interesting, though, that to me was like almost misleading, is when you're looking at the World Needs a Hero little video that came out. You know, it keeps jumping between you see Robert Pattinson's Batman along with Aquaman, along with Flash, along with Black Adam, but we know full well that the Matt Reeves Batman is going to exist on its own, and that there really is no intention or plan to cross him over with any of these other heroes. So that was the one thing I thought. I'm like, they're almost pulling a fast one, because it seems like he's part of that same world, but he's not.
Yeah. I don't think anyone should read into that. I think it's just saying like, hey, all these things coexist. They're here.
It is,
Doesn't
but
mean that
that's
they're all interconnected, but they're there. This is all for
yeah.
you. This is all our properties, and it's all of our things to
Yeah,
enjoy.
but to me, believe it or not, that's still like the weird, interesting thing in all this. The fact that Matt Reeves gets to be the only outlier in all this, because he got his Batman movie at a time where there wasn't, where there was a vacuum of leadership, where no one really knew what was going on at the very beginning of 2017. Ben Affleck just knew he was out. He was not interested anymore, and
Right.
he could see how they were about to overhaul Justice League, and everything was still massively up in the air. And that's why Matt Reeves got to be able to like get his creative freedom sort of clause in his contract to do this Batman movie exactly as he wants to do it without any sort of DCEU connections of any kind. But meanwhile, if he would have gone in for that same meeting like 1 year later, they would not have approved that plan. You know what I mean? The people who
Right.
are in charge now would probably not say, hey, why don't you make an entire DC series that has nothing to do with everything else we're trying to plan? You know? So it's just
Right.
an interesting little like footnote in all this is that Reeves gets to be on an island, but it's specifically because of when he went to pitch this movie and the position DC was in when they asked him if he was interested, you know, because it wouldn't
Yeah.
be happening otherwise.
I was also just
And
thinking, I mean, kind of interesting that maybe it's also that like it shows what faith that DC and Warner has in the Batman property,
yeah,
where they do think that it can be its own standalone thing, whereas maybe they don't feel as strongly about. I mean, it's just a way to look at it: Aquaman, Wonder Woman, and Flash, and that people are only interested if it is part of some kind of connected thing. Whereas they
yeah,
know Batman could really live life on its own. So it's just an interesting angle to look at it. I don't know,
yeah.
I could know what's in people's heads, but it just, but it's like you said too. It's definitely because at the time it's stuff was just up in the air, and they were like,
Yeah.
we need something for people to get excited about and to do something like really,
But also
art house and knock it out of the park.
but like and speaking of things that might not have happened except for other decisions that were made, like, you know, we spoke earlier about how like James Gunn got on Peacemaker and Suicide Squad
Mm-hmm.
because Disney fired him, right? Well, in a slightly sort of similar way, you know, the fact that Aquaman somehow got filmed before they decided to blow everything up. They, you know, Aquaman got filmed before Justice League's reshoots happened, before so many things that went on to happen. You know, people have pointed out, like our friend Rick Shu over at Batman on Film was always quick to point out, and I have to give him credit because he was the first one who pointed this out, that based on Justice League's box office, if they were going to decide just based on that whether or not to proceed with any of these characters, they might not have made an Aquaman movie. You know, because Justice League opened to like 90 million bucks. It was a calamity when that
Right.
came out. But the fact that it was already in the can and they had to try and like make the most of it just kind of shows it like, damn, it's interesting how that worked out. Had it not
Right.
been for the sort of super rushed, sort of poor planning of the DCEU early on, there, we might not have gotten Aquaman, and then who knows? They might have done a much harder reboot after Justice League if not for that. But they couldn't because they hear that they were sitting on James Wan's Aquaman movie. So like, wow, we can't really just nuke this thing. We have to find a
Right.
way to keep it alive. You know, so it's just there's so many interesting little steps along the way. Um, and that's something I kind of want to just float out there here for those of you watching the show. From time to time, Brett and I are going to do episodes that are just like long form on one topic, kind of like we're doing today so far.
Yeah.
But like, you know, like there might be times where we may want to just go do a full look at the DCEU's first 4 years and just unpack all of the insane things that happened there. And, you know, from time to time, we're going to do long forms on one topic. So keep an eye out for those episodes. But okay. Something else that happened as part of all this was The Rock. I think he also shared that the world needs heroes thing on like his personal Instagram. And in the description for that, what did he say, Brett? What
You
did he
know,
promise us?
he said this line. I don't know if you've heard it before, but I think it's that the power hierarchy of the DC universe is about to change.
Yes, the hierarchy of power. I don't know if you've heard of this, folks. But
Yeah, I don't know if,
according to
if
Dwayne
you've seen him
Johnson,
tweet that or say it
yeah,
every year forever.
you think he says it just like in passing, like just involuntarily, like involuntarily, like he's out at the breakfast buffet.
He's just
And he's
all
like,
the
"Can you
time.
pass the ketchup?" By the way, the hierarchy of power.
The hierarchy of power of the DC about to change.
Yeah, he brings that up a lot, but it actually got me thinking. You know, that must mean something. Let's think about it. All right, let's actually
Right.
break down this idea of the hierarchy of power in the DC universe. I'll start by asking you, if you had to look at the DCEU, which basically began in 2013 with the Man of Steel, up to now, what would you say has been the central focus, the central power of the DC Universe movies up to now?
Right. Well, I mean, it would depend. I think if you're looking at individuals or groups, and I'll
Yeah.
explain why quickly. But I mean, if you're going solo, I guess like Superman's top dog right now, right? It's that he's the top of the power hierarchy. But the way I was thinking it too is he could be talking about the Justice League as a whole, because we know in Black Adam we're going to be seeing the Justice Society. And maybe he's saying that those ancient, heroes, because they've been, Hawkman, him, Dr. Fate, been around for a real long time. Maybe they're really the strongest heroes, the ones from like the, not Golden Age, or I guess Golden Age that came before. So I wonder, but I guess Superman. But then the way I also think of it too is you think about, Flash's contribution during the Justice League, especially in the new one where you really see his powers go off. I mean, he can alter, like he can upend reality and like time travel. So that's kind of powerful too.
Yeah.
So I don't know where you go with that, but I guess you would think that. So is he just saying, he's coming in and he's more powerful now, and then he wants to just keep talking that until he finally gets to, rough it up with Superman?
See, here's what I think. Because he's been bringing up this hierarchy of power thing for like at least 3-4 years. He's been bringing it up when talking about this Black Adam thing. And I don't think it's so much a literal discussion of powers about who's got the most, the biggest abilities. I think it's more so about like, who's the boss of the DCEU? Who are the main characters? What has been the focus? And in my mind, that's the Justice League, the overall thing, because all of those first few movies were about setting up the Justice League, right? Man of Steel, BVS, even Suicide Squad. It happened in the shadow of Superman's death and was originally meant to sort of pay off with Steppenwolf and all that sort of stuff. But like, the early focus was getting to this Justice League concept, and they've been the primary focus, if you will, of the DCEU up to this point. And I think what he's been trying to get at, because it suits him to promote it this way, but B, he's also been behind the scenes knowing that like things are about to change anyway. Like, the focus is about to change. And he's trying to basically point out that like the focus of the DC universe is going to be shifting in a major way after this year. And that the stuff that he's planning with Black Adam and the Justice Society, like that's the stuff we're going to be talking about moving forward. The stuff that comes out of these next few movies, the entire power structure of DC on film as we know it is going to shift towards a new, flock of characters. So instead of focusing so much on Justice League, there's going to be a new crop of characters for you to focus on. And I think his Black Adam saga, whatever he's mapped out there, is going to be a pretty big deal, because we know he's trying to have a clash against Superman. We know he's including the Justice League. We know Black Adam eventually has to do something with Shazam. So I have a feeling too that like one of the big surprises in The Flash is that Black Adam will factor in somehow towards the end. I feel like The Flash is going to set us up for everywhere we're going next. And I feel like they don't want to mention that just yet because the movie's not out. They don't want to spoil that. But I feel like if The Flash is going to really sort of chart the course for where we go next, I think it'll be interesting if like Black Adam, there's some sort of Black Adam tease that's part of the Flash film.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that. Another theory I was thinking too is that, with The Rock being who he is, Dwayne Johnson, and them signing him, I'm assuming for multiple films, and how he's been talking up his character, like you said, the Clash of Superman. Maybe by also the power hierarchy is he's kind of hinting that he's gonna maybe be the big bad like a few films from now, and that might lead for the next Justice League team up. Like he could be like the new Thanos. Like we get the origin story with Black Adam. He has the anti-hero persona with the Justice Society. And I guess maybe we see him go down a dark path. We see him again in Shazam, have a big fight there, but he doesn't get killed. Maybe he gets away or something like that, or gets locked up. And then eventually he breaks out. And it's almost like the way I look at it is, even though I think he's a bigger deal than Loki, but he's like the Loki. Like he appeared in a few movies and then he becomes the guy to kind of like usher in like this next big giant battle where we need the whole Justice League involved.
Yeah.
So that could be his kind of his thing too, is that like I'm about to gain so much power, like no one's been able to stop me.
Yeah.
But we know
I think
Justice
it's
League
both
is
metaphorical. I think it's metaphorical and physical. I think Black
Yeah.
Adam is about to become like a central point in DC on film and where they go next, especially if if they reverse engineered most of Black Adam's plans to get him to fight Superman. I have a feeling that that's really what he's talking about the focus on him and how important and pivotal Black Adam is going to be to where DC on film goes next.
Yeah.
So
I was even gonna say too. I don't know if you ever noticed, but when he was a wrestler, he used to
Yeah.
always say he was the most electrifying man in sports entertainment. And
Yeah.
it's funny that he's playing Black Adam now, who is a big lightning bolt and it has like electric powers.
Yeah.
He kind of like predetermined his own destiny.
He kind of did.
So
He
who
called
knew?
his
Who
shot. He called his shot, if you will. And look, while we're talking about all this with the Flash and Superman and stuff, I kind of want to just touch base on some interesting rumors I've been hearing. And this is also going to sort of act as your Superman on film update for the week. Because, yeah, I'm interested. I'm hearing some very interesting things about this Flash movie. And some of it piques my curiosity. Some of it I'm not so sure I buy, but I wanted to share it with you because I think it's interesting and it's connected to Superman. And I'm just curious to see how this is all going to go. But look,
very good.
Michael Shannon and whatever her name is, the one Antja, whatever, the one who played Feora.
Yeah.
They're in the Flash. They're on the official cast list.
Right.
Okay. And it sounds like they're going to sort of relitigate some of the stuff that happened in Man of Steel. What's something that happened in Man of Steel that was polarizing? That if you were trying to sort of right some wrongs and reset some things, you might go back and change. Is there anything that comes to mind for Man of Steel that was divisive and polarizing?
Well, there's quite a few things, I think, but the big one would probably be Superman snapping Zod's neck and committing
that's exactly
murder or genocide, if you will.
Well, that's exactly what I hope you'd say, because I hear a rumor that Zod will be back and that he will not die this time around. And I'm wondering if they're going to go back and revisit that pivotal moment and perhaps give us an ending that's more like what Christopher Nolan had originally wanted, where Zod and Feora are sent back into the Phantom Zone to be able to be a threat later on instead of killing Zod off.
Right.
Because that's one of the things I heard, that Zod and Feora absolutely factor into this, and that this time around, Michael Shannon's Zod will actually survive the proceedings. But then now I'm going to mix in one of the things that I heard that just makes me go, wait a minute. No, they can't do that. Somebody misheard something. But the thing that I heard that I'm like, people are going to be furious about if it's true, is that we're going to relive some of the moments from Man of Steel, but with Supergirl in Superman's place, kind of doing it, almost like they're replacing Superman in the story. Now, that's the part that I don't really believe. That's the part that I have a hard time thinking that they would go that far, especially if there is going to be a Superman cameo of some kind. Why would you just, you know what I mean? Like, I don't fully buy that.
Yeah. I mean, also, like, you're just by Michael Shannon and Feora being there, and if they are going to revisit something, I mean, like, don't you have to have Cavill? Unless we're going to get, like, this faceless Superman that we keep getting. We get Shazam with no face. We have silhouette Superman and Peacemaker. And in this one, we just don't see his head the whole time. I don't know.
And listen, and I should add, while we're talking about this, is I flipped yet again. Because my friend Nick Farina has put together some very compelling, he's put together a very compelling argument that Henry Cavill will be showing up in The Flash and Shazam and Black Adam. Remember the stuff we were talking last week about how
Right.
he was like seen mysteriously near those sets? He added in also that he had his hair dyed black the way he does when he's Superman specifically, because his hair is not usually as dark.
Right.
So I'm starting to think, okay, he is going to be in there. That's why I don't believe that one particular rumor that they're going to actually replace Superman with Supergirl in scenes from Man of Steel. That to me is a bridge too far. But what I can believe is that currently Supergirl is in some stage of pre-production where they are quietly fast tracking this Supergirl movie starring Sasha Calle. And I hear right now that the studio is conducting a search for a director for the project. And I would expect them to have all of that ready in a nice little package for us after The Flash comes out. Because I feel like they don't want to announce it now because we haven't even met the Supergirl yet. And in a way, it might like spoil things. But I feel like just like that World Needs Heroes teaser focuses on these 4 movies, I think The Flash is going to show us like what the next wave of movies is. And Supergirl is going to be one of the very first things out of the gate. And I hear that Warner Brothers is currently very quietly taking meetings and doing everything they can to kind of have that locked in place. So Supergirl is coming pretty darn soon. So I did just kind of want to share that. Do you have any thoughts on that, Brett?
Well, what I'm hoping is that in The Flash, he travels all the way back or sideways or whatever through the multiverse, and he gets to Superman 2 with Christopher Reeve, and he stops him from throwing a weird cellophane emblem of the S out of his chest. That if they do that, that will easily be the best comic book movie ever made forever. It will never be surpassed.
Yeah, but see, but then that opens the question: what if he doesn't go to Richard Lester's Superman 2? What if he goes to the Richard Donner cut of Superman 2, where there is no shitty cellophane S? Huh? What if they do that? Huh?
Now you're talking.
See, they're not just going to have this Flash movie retcon the DCEU. This is going to go back and fix the Christopher Reeve movies. This is going to get rid of George Clooney and as Batman. This Flash movie is going to right every wrong. Halle Berry's Catwoman, gone.
Just erased from existence.
Yeah, they're just going to go back and say, this movie is going to be our apology for every bad decision of the last 50 years of DC.
That would actually, I would be very impressed if they did that.
But yeah, so listen, that is the Superman on film update for the week. That we're going to be getting some Zod and Feora involvement in the Flash. That seems to be 100% the case. The rumor is that Zod will actually live, so I wonder if they're going to go back in time and Superman will not kill Zod. And that's the thing. If they do that, I think it opens up a chance for more Superman stories for Cavill. I think if they were to go through the trouble of almost like rehabilitating Man of Steel in that way, then I think they wouldn't do that for just a quick cameo of Superman. They would do that because they want this Superman to have some interesting places to go. And maybe we will finally get those. Yeah, we'll get some more. Listen, this is my optimism and my Superman hoodie here getting the best of me. But yeah, that's all for your Superman on film update. Okay, we got Zod, we got Feora, we have the possibility of Zod continuing. We have the weird possibility of Supergirl replacing him in that third act sequence. But then most importantly, we have a Supergirl movie that's probably going to be announced within days of the Flash coming out because they're getting that movie ready to go in conjunction with the Flash. So that's your Superman on film update for the week. And as of now, I checked it. The final bit of news on the Superman reboot by J.J. Abrams, by J.J. Abrams. Happened on February 26th of 2021. And as we record this, we are about 1 week away from the 1 year anniversary of any kind of solid update on a standalone Superman movie. But of course, there's a part of me that's like wondering, maybe that's because maybe they scrapped the Ta-Nehisi Coates thing, and Abrams is going to find a way to bring back Henry Cavill, who was going to be his star in Superman Flyby, to do a new Superman story. So we'll see. Listen,
Listen, I think you could throw a big cellophane S on that, Mario. You could just throw a big cellophane S right on it. All right.
So we'll see what happens. As soon as there's any more concrete news on a Superman movie, you know who's got you covered, baby. But now we're going to switch over from our boy Superman over to his partner in crime over there at the world's finest, Batman, because there have been some interesting little things that have popped up now that the Batman is almost upon us. And Robert Pattinson and Matt Reeves have been getting interviewed, and little, clips and sound bites keep making their way out of the things that they're saying on their press tour. And there are a couple of characters in particular from Batman's mythology that are in the news lately. So, Brett, why don't you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yes, I always love when like these movies are about to come out, and then like all the questions are getting asked is about the sequel. No one's even seen the movie yet, so it's always really exciting. But recently, I'm not going to pull up the exact quote, but basically, Robert Pattinson was asked about the possibility of having a Robin, and basically he said that he's not afraid of doing that. He said a lot of people are afraid of that, but he's like, I think it could be done really well. And he said the one condition is that it would need to be like a 13-year-old. He wants him to be a really young Robin, so they have a big age gap, and then, kind of work that in. And for me, I mean, listen, it didn't work out great with Chris O'Donnell, who was like already like 20 years old playing an 18-year-old or something like that in Batman Forever. But I think there's a real potential to actually see like a young Dick Grayson on screen with Batman. I mean, I think it will depend on how Robert Pattinson's Batman ends up at the end of this film, and like what kind of growth he has already accomplished and what more he has to do. Because I think that's obviously the most important core part of that. In order for it to not be campy, is that if you're going to introduce Robin, he needs to learn something. It needs to teach him something.
Yeah.
It needs to inform some kind of change in him. And, we know in the comics it really kept him from being so bitter, and it kind of mellowed him out a little bit, and really, I think, kept him from, really crossing into anti-hero territory. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a really cool angle. I for one, would love to see them actually, visit that. And I think, listen, I want to see this movie. I really want to see how the tone is, how the whole movie plays out. But he might be a good Batman to introduce it, and I could almost see it working in this world.
Yeah.
Movie pending. So that's a really, really exciting concept. And then, Mario, if you want to take the next part that you brought up about Reeves.
Before we bring up
or
the
you
next
want to
part,
add on to this? Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I got to disagree with you about Robin in live action. This is just my thing. I don't think it works. I barely like the Chris O'Donnell one in those campy movies. And then in the Christopher Nolan movies, I remember feeling Robin wouldn't work here. And then from what we've seen so far of this Batman, to me, it would clash so much. I don't know. I feel like I've never been a big fan of Batman and Robin, believe it or not. I mean, I like the old 60s Adam West TV series and stuff like that. But my favorite Batman stories have always been him on his own. And to me, when you introduce Robin, it has the potential to make the whole thing pretty silly. I don't know. I feel like you got to have a really clear story and character dynamic between them in mind if you're going to do that. And with everything we've seen so far with this Reeves Batman being so dark, and on top of that, he's kind of young. He's at the beginning of his career. I feel like it's way too soon to be talking about Robins. I wouldn't want to see him have a Robin until he's been Batman for like 10, 15 years. And now it's time to bring that young character in for whatever reason. Yeah. But for me personally, I'm in no rush to get to Robin. I think it doesn't appeal to me. It doesn't call to me. And That's what I think about that.
Yeah, I was gonna say too. Like, I don't think in this case I would not want to see it in this sequel to this movie. I think it's
Yeah,
way too soon. Like, I'd want to see it maybe in like the third or fourth movie introduce that
yeah,
concept. But yeah, I know it's scary. It's a very slippery slope. Listen, you're gonna have to get an amazing actor. You're
yes,
gonna make the writing needs, like, literally you need to do it perfect. So it is a slippery slope in that sense. But I do think I have read a lot of comics. Especially, I know we'd be doing probably the Dick Grayson version, but a lot of the comics with Damian Wayne,
yeah.
for my 2 cents, I love them. I enjoy
Hmm.
them. It gives a really cool dynamic for Batman. I mean, you look at it this way: we're both so in love with Superman and Lois, and different tone. But I'm really enjoying like watching the family aspect or him trying to like
Yeah.
be Superman with the kid, and I think that could be interesting for Batman. I know the worry is that it takes some of the darkness away, but I don't know. Dick Grayson, like,
I mean,
his
listen,
story is very tragic, and he
yeah.
can be a very dark character too.
If
So,
they approach it like The Last of Us, if they approach it like one
right,
of these things, where there's a kid and there's this, there's this sort of like a darkness and a depth to it like that,
yeah,
maybe, you know what I mean? But to me, I don't think we're there yet. And yeah, honestly, sadly enough, if there was a live action Batman that I think I could have seen with a Robin next to him and with a Robin story, it would have been Batfleck. You know what I mean? When
yeah,
they showed the dead Robin thing, and we had the thought of maybe having a Batman movie that explores that and the death of Robin and how that happened, that didn't weird me out. I'm like, oh, I could see that because
right.
Zack Snyder would probably cast like a 20-year-old kind of badass Robin, and we'd want to find out what happened to him. But in this particular case, picturing the Pattinson Batman with some kid, it rubs me the wrong way, you know. Um, but the other one that came up, and again, this is just Reeves goofing around. I don't think he's actually planning this. Of course, the clickbait websites like to act like, oh, Reeves is planning Mr. Freeze for
Right.
Batman 2. It's like, no, he was asked about it, and he said that he does think that there is a grounded way to do Mr. Freeze. So let me ask you, Brett,
Yeah.
big Batman fan, you'd love his rogues gallery and all that. How would is Mr. Freeze high up there on your villains that you want to see them go to next?
Well, Mr. Freeze is interesting because he's not like, as we've seen in a lot of interpretations, he's not like wholly bad, and he like
Yeah.
the really he's just trying to like save his wife. So like he does
Yeah.
have like this an emotional backstory, and there is a cool, I think, angle in there to bounce off of Batman and that dynamic. It could also definitely be set up as a thing where maybe he's like a villain for half of it, and then he kind of changes at the end, and like they team up or something like that. Like that
Yeah.
character, he's the kind of character that works in that way, that you could do that and have like a really cool crowd pleasing moment with him where he kind of like helps Batman out or something. But yeah,
Hmm.
he's just got such a cool backstory. He's not just like. He's like one of the few like Batman villains that's not just like a psychopathic murderer with some like you know
Yeah.
that, yeah, basically a psychopathic murderer. So it just is a cool idea. And I love, personally too, the way he's depicted in like Arkham, was it Arkham Asylum and Arkham City? I think he's in both of them.
Yeah.
The way he's depicted in those games is like really really cool. And actually, I think I'm sorry, he's in Arkham. Not Origins. He's in Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, and I do think he's also in Arkham Knight, if I'm not
It's
mistaken.
possible.
And
Yeah.
he's like one of the characters I think that carries over through all three games. And
Hmm.
yeah, they do a lot of cool stuff. I think by the third game, like you meet up with him and he helps you. It's like it's not even like a fight anymore. But there's a really cool fight with it, I think, in Arkham. I'm gonna conflate them, but I think
Yeah.
it's Arkham Asylum. Really awesome
Yeah.
boss fight with him. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. That's one that could work. I'd be excited for that.
Can I just say though that I'm bummed out that we're back in a state of having grounded Batman characters. Because I know like that's what Nolan was going for. It was the grounded version of Bane. It was the ground. Like everything had to be sort of logical and quasi set in a real world scenario, right? I
Right.
was actually getting excited for where Snyder was going, where things were a little more fantastical, and he's
Yeah.
fighting parademons. Because I'm like, in a world where Batman fights parademons, there is a killer croc. Actually, there is a killer croc established in canon from
In a
Suicide
world
Squad.
where Batman fights parademons, there is a killer croc.
But it's true. Like I wanted to. Like this is a Batman that could fight a Clayface. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
no,
Like the bad boy
I'm
Batman.
really down for that too. I want that
Yeah, he
also.
existed in a more stylized comic book universe
Yeah.
where we could see some cool versions of his rogues gallery that we hadn't seen on the big screen, you
I'm
know?
still waiting for like my Batman like horror film, horror thriller.
Well, I mean,
Like that
but I think we are
that's a
getting
movie that
that.
needs to be made.
Yeah, but I feel like considering how 7E this looks and how thriller-y this looks, I feel like we're kind of getting a Batman horror movie. So, you know, especially that
Yeah.
first trailer, like it looks scary. And he's this intimidating figure, and the Riddler is not messing around. This is not just like, what's black and white and red all over. Like, this is some dark, evil stuff, and he's killing corrupt politicians and all that. Like, I think you're going to kind of get your horror Batman kicks here, so to
Yeah.
speak.
I also,
But
as we've been talking, well, we'll continue. Yeah, finish.
no, I think it needs to be said that, like, when I read about grounded versions of these characters, there's a part of me that's just like, oh man, we're back in that stage again. You know,
Yeah.
at a time when most comic book properties are embracing their comic book roots and going more and leaning into the weird. You have Matt Reeves, who's like, well, no, I want to do very earthbound versions of all these characters. I was like, man. But listen, I'm not going to complain. I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth. But whenever I hear about grounded versions of Mr. Freeze, it's kind of a bummer to me.
Well, I also
I
I
want to see
think
real Mr. Freeze.
yeah, I think there's a way that you can ground fantastical versions of characters though, and still keep them fantastic. And like
Yeah.
it just depends. Like that word grounded could mean so many things. Grounded means like it has to totally make sense in a reality setting, but like
Yeah.
it doesn't, because just like your main character doesn't even make sense in the reality setting. This guy doing what he does, like
Yeah.
you like by after like a year or two, all of his bones would just be shattered and broken. Like he's not
Yeah.
doing this for 30 years. So I mean, listen, if you want to go down that road, but you need to you can ground it by just grounding a great backstory for him, but he could still have like these weird things where he needs to stay cold because he did an experiment on himself
Yeah.
and screwed up. Like you can still have, I think, that fantastical element and
Yeah.
keep him grounded in other ways. Just how not to do grounded is when you do Schwarzenegger's Mr. Freeze, where
Yeah.
like he just now I'm blue, so I'm gonna always make ice puns. Like I'm gonna speak in a different way now. Like that's not grounded. You know what I mean? But you
Yeah.
can still have like a fantastical guy with fantastical elements, but be grounded. But
Yeah.
the other thing I was thinking of too is, as we're talking about this, one more little thing to throw in. If I'm not mistaken, Pattinson was also asked about like other villains or something that could happen in the series, and this one does work in Reeves' grounded universe, much to your dismay. But he brought up the Court of Owls, which is kind of
Yeah.
a newer
See, that would be huge.
idea. And that's also like, I would still say like, I know there's like definitely horror-y elements to this, but I would still say it's fixed more to a crime thriller.
Yeah.
But I think with the Court of Owls is something you could do a little more horror, or even more recent comics like Death of the Family, where there's like some really cool horrific stuff with Joker in there, where he like cuts his face off, and then it's like put up in Gotham PD, and then he breaks in and steals his face back and like staples it back to his body.
Yeah.
Like, so you can get like really, 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 creepy and dark with that.
And I could
especially
see
even
Reeves
like a
going
character like
there.
Scarecrow too, which we had already, but we could go way
Yeah.
further with that also.
I could really see Reeves going for all that stuff. And before we transition out of Batman, I will say, like, there was just this idea in my head once for a grounded Killer Croc that I'm like, that you could do, is if you introduce him as a cannibal, because there are real cannibals, right?
Right.
And there are some skin diseases that make your skin look almost scaly.
Yeah.
So if you have this big, scary cannibal guy who's got that disease, and on the streets they call him Croc because of the scales. So listen, I do like the cleverness of like, how do we take the larger elements and make them more, believable. But at the same time, there's just going to be that part of me that's like, no, but I want a Batman that can fight Clayface, damn it.
Right.
But okay. Speaking of fantastical things, the big trailer at the Super Bowl that everyone was talking about was Marvel's Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness trailer. There were a couple things in that damn near broke the internet. But Yeah, first, just a quick, just general trailer reaction. When you saw Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, you saw that trailer. Did it increase your hype for Doctor Strange 2? Did you stay the same? Did it decrease your hype? What'd you think of the trailer?
Well, there's my gothic horror from Sam Raimi. Yeah, no, honestly, yeah, this trailer got me hyped for that movie. I've been
Yeah,
kind of like I've been interested just because I know it's doing the multiverse, and now that we've really gotten tastes from Loki and
yeah.
Spider-Man No Way Home, I knew that this was really going to blow the doors off. But I was lukewarm on the first Doctor Strange film, and I like his appearances in the other movies, but he's not like some character that I really like, am super into. But yeah, this trailer got me pumped. It looks absolutely wild. The visuals are just unbelievable, and I really hope the shots definitely look gothic horror, but I really hope in the actual like plot and how the story moves along, I really hope they lean into that. But that's going to be the thing that really makes that movie for me if they really go there, and I'm hoping with Sam Raimi on board they will. But yeah, this totally got my hype level way up for
Yeah.
the movie.
I mean, they're letting Raimi be Raimi, right? He like it.
Yeah.
It looks like a Sam Raimi movie, and you know what? I used to complain on this show and on the Revengers show that like, when it comes to the Marvel movies, the directors are sort of inauspicious. They don't
Yeah.
leave a strong impression.
Well,
To this
some,
day,
right?
who directed Captain Marvel? Go.
Yeah, it's the two people. I know
Yeah,
it was
you
two
have no
people.
idea, right? If I were to just rattle off some of these, you couldn't really name the directors are just nondescript and nothing special. So for Doctor Strange, the fact that it says from director Sam Raimi, and they're like leaning into the fact that here's this auteur director that film fans have had a relationship now with since the mid '80s. I just thought it was kind of cool. Like, ooh, okay, this is almost like a signaling of like a change in the way they do things. Here is sort of an
Yeah.
auteur-driven Marvel movie.
Isn't it funny
In a
how
way.
they do that only with certain like we could just really quick sidebar, but
Yeah.
okay, the Russo brothers, like theirs is their movies
Yes.
very much stand out. Obviously James Gunn, it's like James Gunn's Guardian
Yep.
of the Galaxy, like it's his whole thing where he gets to do whatever he wants.
Yeah.
We have Sam Raimi now, but then you look at like the movies where like Thor had like a different director every time,
Yeah.
and like except for Thor Ragnarok, most of the other ones weren't, and
Yeah.
we had Sir Kenneth Branagh on the first one, and it was like,
And nobody
um,
cared.
and nobody cared. And then you have like these directors that we don't really know who they are that were kind of like probably just bought in to be like studio pawns, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So Captain Marvel, which but look at the movies that kind of like were like Captain
Yeah.
Marvel, the first Doctor Strange, the first two Thors, and those are the ones that were kind of made by committee. You could almost argue Ant-Man too, but I think Peyton Reed is a much better director than some of these other nobodies.
Yeah.
I don't mean to be like rude, but I think Peyton Reed, especially listen, man, he directed the season finale of season 2 of The Mandalorian. That was Peyton Reed. That's our Ant-Man director for Ant-Man 1 and 2.
Yeah.
So we got to give him a little bit of props. The guy knows what he's
Hey.
doing.
Oh.
Hey.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting though, but like the movies that stand out, and it's funny how like they want to do that for some franchises, but it seems like other ones they're like, no, let's just get someone that we could push around.
Yeah.
So we can make this film by like committee or something. I
Yeah.
don't know. It's just that's just an interesting thing for me. I don't know. I
Yeah.
thought about it today like earlier.
Yeah.
So
Well, in terms of the trailer, it definitely increased my hype level from like 0 to like 6. Yeah, I'm still not like
0 to 6.
well out of 10.
2.5
Okay?
seconds.
Yeah. Like I'm still not like, oh my God, I have
Yeah.
to see this Doctor Strange movie. But I'm definitely interested now. And of course, the big thing that broke the internet was that at the end, it appears that we get a visitor from another Marvel universe. We hear what seems to be Patrick Stewart's voice saying something like, do you want to tell him or should we tell him? And it
Yeah.
looks like we're looking over the shoulder of Professor Charles Xavier from the Fox X-Men universe. Now suddenly being brought into the proper MCU universe. And this is after what happened in Spider-Man No Way Home, where now we've embraced all the Sony Spider-Man movies and and now we act as if those are officially accepted into the canon, so to speak, of the MCU. Now we're folding in the Fox X-Men universe, and
Yeah.
that's going to be sort of canon too. You know, I mean, we're going to see how they play it out, but you know, I don't think they can backpedal on this. Like it's not like in WandaVision when they brought in the other Quicksilver and then named
Right.
him like Richard Boner or something, and it wasn't really the other Quicksilver. Like if they're gonna have Patrick Stewart in the multiverse of madness as Xavier, they're acknowledging that those other X-Men movies existed and that
Right.
that's one of the universes in this world that Marvel is setting up now, you know?
Yeah.
And I just think that's interesting because that's two movies in a row. And it's starting to show that, like, is that one of the underlying things about this phase? Because remember, after Avengers Endgame, we kind of went off into the great unknown with Marvel. After a 22 movie lead up, a 22 movie Infinity Saga.
Right.
Now you had Endgame, which Kevin Feige still refers to in recent interviews as the last Avengers movie. It's the end of that. So they're not going to continue on that story. That's the end of that. The big
Right.
question is, where do we go from here? You know, we heard about Shang-Chi and the Eternals and some of these other movies coming out, but now it's starting to like come into focus that this multiverse thing and bringing in all the Marvel that's happened up to now
Yep.
into everything, even bringing in the Marvel Netflix stuff with Daredevil and Kingpin showing up. Like this, it seems like this phase is about shoring up and expanding the Marvel canon to include everything that's come before.
Yeah.
And I like, who saw that coming? You know, like
Right.
it's just such. I don't know where they're going with this, and what other Marvel X-Men characters are they going to bring from that continuity, right? Because
Yeah.
everyone thought, okay, they're going to introduce a whole new breed of X-Men, and they're going to act like those other X-Men movies never happened. But if you're bringing in Xavier, is that it? Is it a one and done? Are
Right.
they going to bring back James McAvoy to play him younger? Like I don't know where they go from here, but
Yeah.
you
Well,
know,
the big piece, right, is that not only Xavier, we're pretty sure it's him, but they're also thinking that this is Doctor Strange meeting the Illuminati, which is a bunch of really strong characters or powerful characters from multiple Marvel universes,
yeah,
or I don't even know if they're the same or multiple, probably multiple, that are there to like basically make sure that the Marvel multiverse is not like a shit show.
yeah.
So it looks like they could do that, and then that could just be again the multiverse. Now it could just be one Xavier from one universe, and we can recast everything. But it certainly seems that the way the next new team of Avengers is going to be built is through the multiverse, traveling through the multiverse to finally combat Kang the Conqueror. And I think after we're gonna get a lot of more insight, I think, with Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. And whoop, I'm gonna sneeze. Okay, I stopped it. The sneeze is gone.
You did it.
So
You're a hero.
Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and then I also believe that we will learn a lot more in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, where we're actually supposed to see Kang the Conqueror, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's rumored to be the villain, or at least be a big part of that film. So listen, Wolverine was an Avenger at one point. A couple of X-Men were on the Avengers team
No,
before, so
okay, so,
we
so
could
since
be
you
working
bring
up
that
to
up,
that.
I have to ask though, because like, let's say Xavier's back after the send off that Logan was, right, for both Xavier and for Logan and for Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. Like, does this cheapen that exit if he's back, or is it just like, screw it? I just bringing him into the MCU is worth it.
I think I would do more. It would cheapen it for me if they brought Hugh Jackman back.
Because that was
But
my next
Patrick Stewart
question.
for some reason doesn't bother me. And
Okay.
also one of the things, and again, we can't tell because it's such a quick shot, you can't see anything. It does look like Patrick Stewart is wearing an outfit fit similar to what he wore in Days of Future Past. So I wonder if they could play a thing where it's that version of him where they didn't get to go back and save it, and that universe went on, and at that point he's still alive, but most of the other mutants are dead. And
Yeah.
then they have to go to another universe to really get the mutants in or something, and then they can recast everybody. And I don't know. I wonder if they'll do some weird trickery with that.
Yeah.
I don't know. They could do so much stuff. It's really nuts. And
It's nuts.
Hey,
It's
man.
nuts. But see, I'm glad you brought up like weird trickery and stuff, because now I'm gonna sort of like segue a little bit back into DC, because here's the thing I'm intrigued about. Okay, in Spider-Man: No Way Home, and conceivably in this Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness thing, um, they kind of have this idea of all these heroes can interact, but they do belong to one specific timeline, and that's the
Right.
specific world that they know, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm confused about over on the DC end of things is like there were some set pictures that leaked this week that showed Michael Keaton's Batman interacting with the J.K. Simmons Commissioner Gordon.
Right.
And we know that that's not his Gordon, right? He wasn't the Gordon of the Batman and Batman
Right.
Returns movies. So a part of me is wondering too, like, is DC gonna act like all these universes exist on their own, or are they gonna somehow merge all these timelines? Because especially if we're gonna have Michael Keaton be like the Batman that interacts in these shared universe movies, and he's basically replacing Ben Affleck, what does that mean for Ben Affleck's Bruce Wayne? You know, and why would Ezra Miller, you know, why would Barry Allen choose to live in a completely different continuity? You know, like why would he
Yeah.
leave his?
I'm
It seems
wondering.
more like they're bringing Michael Keaton into his. But yeah, so I'm very intrigued. I wonder like if that's going to get confusing at all.
Well, I'm
You know?
wondering if they're doing kind of what they did in with how they kind of handle this stuff more in the comics, and especially with Jim Lee at the helm now. And I know he oversaw like the New
Yeah,
52, which was a big kind of weird, university change
yeah, like a
thing.
reset.
But yeah, that kind of the way that worked, I think. Yeah, there was just like a bunch of stuff where just like some people just got replaced and it just merged into a new universe. So I
Yeah,
think Barry's gonna have to screw stuff up pretty bad, and then it's just gonna be like
yeah,
no, it becomes like this weird conglomerate, and just like some versions replace the other versions, and it's like no, this is how it all looks now. Like it's just a big puzzle
yeah,
piece
and I
put
guess,
together.
and that's the thing though. Like it's going to be very interesting to see how they pull it off,
Yeah,
because there is it almost seems like they're trying to have it both ways. They're invoking the idea of the multiverse, but all they're really doing is picking and choosing the elements they want to keep and just making this the continuity
that's
now.
what they do in the comics. That's literally how they handle the paperback comics. So like
Yeah,
I think they just go that route and just like comic people are used to that. Let's just do that. And that way it also in a way makes it a little different than Marvel, because Marvel's not resetting their universe. They're just saying all these universes exist concurrently
yeah,
and we're just going to be popping in and out. But
yeah,
DC might say, "Hey, we're going to explore that a little bit, but we're going to use it to like make this new world, this
yeah,
new continuity, and that's what we're going to work off of." And then maybe they make other trips back to the multiverse later and it changed it again, but like theirs is
yeah,
more of a reset, whereas Marvel is just more of an expansion. So I
yeah.
think that's
Because
cool though. It just makes it a little bit different, and it's that way it's not
yeah,
the same thing. So
yeah,
whatever.
it's going to be weird because for all intents and purposes, at the end of the Flash, he's going to be in that new suit that we've seen, right? That they glimpsed it at we glimpsed it in that the world needs a hero teaser. So he's going to be in the new suit with presumably the Michael Keaton Batman as the predominant Batman Bruce Wayne of his world,
Mm-hmm.
as well as what other interesting stuff they incorporate. And this is just the new normal for DC on film. So
Right.
it's not so much that he visited other universes for a little while. He just made a whole new one out of existing
Yeah.
parts. You know, so it's going to be interesting to see how that's accepted, how it's pulled off, because at least we could say so far that with Spider-Man No Way Home, Marvel's pulling off this concept. The way
Yeah.
that movie just passed Avatar at the domestic box office. It's the biggest hit in years and years by a large
Yeah.
margin. And no one's confused about how they got all three Spider-Men in that movie. So it's going to be interesting to see if DC is going to stick the landing on that too, or if it's just going to seem sort of contrived, like, oh, this is just a reboot, but you found a weird backdoor creative way to explain it, you know?
Right.
So, yeah, did you have any closing thoughts on the Multiverse of Madness and the fact that like pretty much both Marvel and DC, no matter what your particular brand of superhero-dom is, you're about to have to be very, very comfortable with the multiverse these next 2 years.
Yeah.
Do you have any feelings about that?
Well, I'll tell you what, I need to catch up and finish Marvel's What If, because there was a ton of stuff in that Multiverse of Madness trailer that links right back to that series. So that
Yeah.
has become now crucial watching, which is crazy because now Disney and Marvel are saying, like, you even got to watch the animated shows because we might pull stuff from there that's going to like
Yeah.
everything's connected. So they're really opening the doors to a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And there's been a couple of little rumors off this trailer too, that someone sees that, like, when they're reality hopping in the trailer, you kind of see them bouncing through different, like, realities. There's one that looks like they come from an animated one. Someone's saying from, like, a freeze frame. So I mean, yeah, you can go online and read these, like, crazy articles or YouTube videos where they pick it apart. But yeah, Marvel's really, they're going really crazy. But I think DC is looking for a reset. But that trailer got me pumped. I'm probably about like a 7 out of 10. Before, I was definitely more like, I wouldn't say I was at a 0, but I was definitely like a 2 or a 3.
Yeah.
I'm definitely in the 7s now. Like, like I said, he's still not my favorite character, but I am very curious to see how this is really going to blow the concept up. It's gonna be an interesting year.
Yes, it is an interesting couple of years. And I just want to wrap up with just a cool little thing. It was announced earlier today that John Williams, legendary composer John Williams, is returning to the world of Star Wars. He's going to be providing the theme for the Obi-Wan Kenobi series that's arriving on Disney Plus later this year. And
May,
you,
right?
Brett, huh?
Yeah. I think May.
Yeah,
Did
something
we get
like
the
that.
release? May 25th or something?
You, Brett, you're a composer. How does that
Yes.
strike you?
It's great news. It's great news. Not that, listen, the new composers they've had on, like, Mandalorian and Boba Fett have been tremendous. So
Yeah.
they definitely have some great talent. But yeah, John Williams is so iconic, and I mean, listen, as far as I'm concerned, this is all his anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's nice to have him coming back, and then he can give us some cool motifs and themes. I mean, he's a master. He's done everything, and it wouldn't maybe feel like Star Wars, like truly like Star Wars, especially with a character like Obi-Wan, not a new character, but an old character revisiting. It's nice to have that familiarity with the music. So that's really exciting. So he's just doing the theme, though. That he's not going to be scoring the whole show. It's just the main theme. Hey,
but listen, I think that's huge, especially because homie retired like 10, 15 years ago. He retired, and then I remember they convinced him to come back for the prequel trilogy because, like, how can you? I mean, not the prequel, the sequel trilogy. Because how can you do Star Wars without John Williams? Right. And then he basically disappeared again for these last couple of years, and now here he comes just for Obi-Wan Kenobi. To me, like, that seems like he must want to do this. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't have to. You know, they've already got composers on the case, and everyone's doing great, and nobody's like, clamoring, so to speak, for a John Williams theme. But here he is coming back, and he's going to write something new for this. He must have something he wants to write or something in mind already.
It's a legacy character, so it's just nice to bring back the composer for the legacy.
Oh, I can't wait. But
very, very
you know what? I think it's time to bring this baby home, Brett. Is that how you feel?
Let's dance at home.
Let's dance at home. So everyone, we hope you enjoyed this 137th episode of the Fanboy Podcast. If you get a chance, please go leave us a 5-star review. That stuff really helps. It helps with the algorithms. It helps people find the show. It helps people hear and know just how awesome. And if you're enjoying this reboot with Brett as the official permanent co-host, let me know. Let us know with your 5-star review. All right.
And we should remind them too that we have the audio only version on your favorite podcast services.
Yes.
Leave us the reviews there and the 5-star reviews. But you may also be watching this. You'll notice we now have a YouTube presence. So please check us out on YouTube, like the videos, leave us comments there. Please share with your friends. Subscribe, of course. Hit that little bell thing, wherever that is on the screen, because that gives you notifications when we post new things. And I also want to remind people that not only do every Friday at noon we have the audio version and we get the full video version out, but then throughout the week we do actually break up the podcast into clips of the individual topics. So So if you don't have time to sit there for an hour, hour and a half,
Yeah.
or however long we recorded for, you can just go check out a 10-minute clip on the bit of news that you were really interested in. And we actually do like about 1 or 2 videos, depending how many topics we have a day, leading up to next podcast release. So you can just kind of digest it in little bits over the course of the week while you jog to work, while you lay down and relax. And we hope you'll join us there too. So thank you.
Absolutely. And folks, coming up pretty soon too. I'm excited to use our new platform to do a live stream. One of these weeks, we might do a thing. I'm springing this on you, Brett, but we record.
I was like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. We record this show Thursday nights at 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and we could do a thing where we just record and have you there. We'll be live streaming on YouTube, and we'll still put up the episode the next day, but we could have listeners join the stream and submit questions live and be there with us. Join us on the stream. So we're going to be organizing some sort of live stream event soon in the weeks to come. And just to put that on your radar, folks, one of these coming weeks, Thursday at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you could get in on a live recording of the Fanboy Podcast. So just keep that in mind.
Very cool.
And so, folks, until next week,
life is chaos.
Be kind. Adios.